we really want to take time to thank Ben Schwartz from Empire Comics Vault and Sauce.
And hot sauce.
And hot sauce. Really appreciate you taking the time, Ben. I know your store is like just about closed, so you taking the time to do this for us is really great. And I know you've got some great things to talk about. One of the things I really love about what you do every week is you take the time to kind of show what's coming out on the of the new comic books that are coming out. And it really kind of gives you an idea. I was talking with a friend about this last night, and he's on the East Coast, but he's like, I see all this list of everything that's coming out, but just that little bit of you showing like what the cover is kind of just gives you a little bit more of a spark of what to kind of look for.
Yeah, and during a time like this, it's extremely important because there's a lot of people who can't get to a comic shop, whether their comic shop's closed or they're just being cautious. So being able to see those things, and it's like you're in the shop. So I'm really happy to be able to still do that.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to jump out of here, Ben. I'm going to turn this over to you and talk some comics, and hopefully we'll get some folks that are really intrigued by this and want to ask some questions too at the end.
That's perfect. That's good. I'm down.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
All right. Well, here we are. First off, let me introduce myself to those of you who do not know. I am Ben Schwartz of Empire's Comics Vault and Hot Sauce here in Sacramento, California. And the hot sauce is on there because we have recently started carrying hot sauce. We've got a wall over there filled with it. So yeah, a little bit about myself. I have been a longtime comic reader back in the day when it was Safeway or 7-Eleven. That was the only place you could get it. And my Safeway was so lazy with the comic books that sometimes they would just pull a cart up filled with comics and you would have to sort through till you could find what you could get. Now, it was years later, my mom finally comes to me one day and goes, "Hey, there's a comic store in town." I was like, "No, you're kidding me. There's absolutely no way." I still remember it. It's Land of Never-Was. They're long gone, but they will always have a place in my, and I'm sure plenty of other people's hearts. So here at the shop, we do predominantly comics, about 95, 99% comics, a few toys as a courtesy, but mainly we're about reading comic books, collecting comic books, loving comic books. And also, we'll talk a little bit about this at the end, about the community that a comic store brings to your neighborhood. But down here at the shop with me, almost on a daily basis, I don't want to introduce you to Captain Dylan Hunt, my youngest pug, about 5 or 6 years old. And then the signature pug here is Roly Poly. This old 13-year-old pug is having a birthday next week. So they are down here all the time with me. It's another reason to find your local shop because each shop is amazingly unique in what they bring to the community. So let's start at the basics. Let's start comic collecting. Where do you go? Because even today, I still have people who come into the shop and they tell me, "This is my first time in a shop." It may have been a TV show. It may have been a movie. Where do you start? How do you collect? How do you make sure you get your issues? And how do you keep them in good shape? Where to start? Find something you like, whether it's a television show you can tell the store owner about, whether it's a genre that you like. Give them some indication of what you want, and there's something on that wall for you. Now, there are constantly new books coming out, so you can find a number one to start on. But what I really want to tell you is if there's something you like, especially if it's like a Marvel or a DC where it's been going on for decades, don't feel intimidated to say, "I'm going to jump in at issue 452. Find an arc, start at a part 1, and just start reading because you'll get to be filled in by the story. They'll tell you more about what's going on. They will let you know what you've missed. In fact, you're going to find some things that you're going to want to go hunt down after that just so that you can immerse yourself in this. Now, once you do that, these are what you're going to want to get. Bags and boards. That's what you put your comics in. There's boxes specifically designed for comics, and you're going to want to keep them in that because it keeps them nice and flush together so that no damage comes to them. But let's look at some comics. Let's just show you what's out there because, as I said, there are a lot of people who never been in a comic store, never read a comic. They love Flash, they love Superman, and there is something on that wall for absolutely everybody. Things you know, things you love. Star Trek is in comic format. There's a Deep Space Nine issues coming out right now. Did you like Walking Dead? Of course you like Walking Dead, whether it was the comic book or the television show. The book is over, unfortunately, but the man who brought it to you is bringing you new books. And this is the one I would recommend if you liked Walking Dead, because Oblivion Song has the same kind of a makeup. You have a ton of characters, a large world, people are coming in, coming out. You never know what's going to happen. And it's dealing with a section of Philadelphia that was transported to another plane, another dimension. And that dimension was transported back and it was filled with beasts. And it's a story of one man trying to rescue the people from Earth on the other side. So another really good one. There is, however, if you like Walking Dead, and it is gone at the moment, I forgot to bring it, but he's still doing one-shots. There's a one-shot about Negan after the series. There's also a collection, a hardcover. Sorry, it's not a collection, it's an original graphic novel. So he's going to be exploring this world and giving you plenty more, even though he's not doing it on a monthly basis. If you're into science fiction, try Decorum. It's a new one from Jonathan Hickman, the master behind East of West, and it is amazing. Beautiful artwork, really confusing, but it's only 6 issues, and there are 3 out right now, and it's starting to spin together. He is a master of that. He'll give you so much information, you almost don't know what to do with it. By the time you get to the end, every single piece had a place. You also got classics for people who want old school. Edgar Rice Burroughs, a few books coming out from this line. Things you'll know, things for young adults. Sabrina, Archie is still being produced after all of these years. There's Jughead. They even have an adult version of both Sabrina and Jughead. Jughead the Hunger, which is a werewolf story. There's going to be things you know from television. Deadly Class was a comic book first. A lot of people don't know that. In fact, there's a lot of things. Last American Crime is on Netflix now. That is also a book. I mean, so it's on the Image wall, and it's by Rick Remender, who is one of my all-time favorites. There's going to be other things you recognize. Buffy. Joss continued this in comic book format, and he continued it after the show. There's actually a season 8 that you can get to find out what happened to Buffy and all of the Slayers after the end of season 7. Of course, you know that Marvel has the rights to, well, Disney has the rights to both Marvel and Star Wars. So there is a huge line of Darth Vader, Dr. Aphra, just Star Wars in general, expanding the universe. And what's really neat about these is that these are canon. Everything you read in these comics, it's just like the novels. It fits in. They have to make sure it goes through editorial over at Lucas, and then you get a full picture. In fact, there's some of the stuff that ties together the new movies that they didn't have time for in the movies, and it explains a lot. So let's hit some big stuff over at DC since we're running down all these comics. I grabbed a lot of stuff, probably more than I needed. Dark Knight's Death Metal by Snyder. This is the conclusion to his run that started on Batman with New 52, spun out into Dark Knight's Metal, and now has Dark Knight's Death Metal. All right, everybody loves Joker. Who doesn't love Joker? And Batman has Joker War going on with crossovers in Batgirl, Nightwing, Detective, anything associated with Batman. You're going to find a piece of the Joker War right there. And things you'll know from the movies, Birds of Prey. Look at that beautiful cover. This is a one-shot, came out in a prestige format. And this is what that is. Anything that's not a normal, it's a normal comic size, but it's a lot thicker, we call the prestige format. So you're going to need a bigger bag and board to fit that one. But it does come out in the comic book size, and it's on the wall like normal. Over at Marvel, we got Empire, which is a galactic war where the Kree and the Skrull have teamed up. And if many of you don't know this, they are constantly at war for millennia. They're teaming up against a common threat, and Earth gets, of course, wrapped up in it. Venom, probably one of the hottest titles Marvel has right now. I can't keep it on the shelf every week. We're back to Hickman. This is a gentleman I told you about over at Decorum. He revolutionized X-Men. They didn't know what to do with this book for years. There's 2 series called House of X, Powers of X, and what they're doing is rewriting the X-Men history with the best retcon I have ever seen in comic books. And what a retcon is if they take something that was already established and they tell you, well, here's what you didn't know about that, therefore changing the entire story without disrupting continuity. I've never seen it done as good as it has been done in this. And this spun out into a whole new line of X-Men with Excalibur, Marauders, X-Force, just plain old X-Men. So the X-Men wall is alive right now. It's better than it's ever been. And it's something that you definitely need to check out if you're a Marvel fan or if you're just a superhero fan in general. So what we can't forget here, we grab these guys, is every comic book store should have a kids section, and they probably do if they're in your area. So check it out. We have a thriving kids section, constantly adding new stuff to it, constantly getting back in the new stuff or the stuff that we love. But what's great about the kids section is it's something that is fun for adults because there's a lot of stuff that can be all ages, but geared towards getting new readers into comics. And I haven't seen as many kids interested in comics in the last decade that I've seen for a long, long time. So again, you're gonna have some you love and know, some DC in kids format. Marvel, of course, has this one. You're gonna find stuff that you know from television, like Avatar. My Little Pony has a thriving line. Plus, you're gonna find things that you've never seen that are just so much fun. One of my favorites that I always recommend is Cleopatra in Space. It's exactly that. It's Cleopatra teleported to space to save the day. Fantasy books like this one. So we're going to hit one more thing here before I talk just a little bit about a couple other topics surrounding comic books in general. Here's a pile of things that I go to immediately when people are looking for stuff to read. So these are books that are so big, no matter where you're at, you should be able to walk into your comic book store and find it. Now, one thing to consider too, if it's not on your comic book store shelf, talk to the person behind the counter, because we are more than happy as a comic book community to order it and get it in for you. And especially during these times, it's extremely important to support your local shop to make sure that it's still here after all this madness has gone away and we can get back to normal. So let's do some go-tos for Ben and Empire's Comics. If you're into horror, the absolute best book on the shelf for horror is Lock and Key. Just got made into a Netflix show, which was good. This is better. The pacing is unbelievable. Starts out with a horrific event and then almost lulls you into this sense of security before they rip the rug back out from under you. It's got a little bit of your slasher, but mainly it's that suspenseful, scary stalker feel that keeps you going and keeps you running through the issues. V for Vendetta, don't have to say much about this. You guys have probably seen the movie. The book is, of course, better. That's not always the case. There's some Umbrella Academy, I'll say it. I liked the television show better than I liked the book, and I loved the book. Sandman, this is one that every comic book reader should read before they die. Doesn't matter what you're into, Sandman should be on your list. There's 10 volumes plus a few extras. This is what you want to go to. Another one I don't need to say anything about, Watchmen. There's been a television show. There's been a successful movie. We're going to talk about Hickman a lot today. I already talked about him for the X-Men. I talked about him for Decorum. My favorite book on the shelf is East of West. What this does is it goes back in time, rewrites American history, jumps ahead into the future, and we get to see what that world looks like. It's a six warring states. There's intrigue within intrigue, wheels within wheels, politics, religion. It is intense, but it's my favorite. And I probably sell more of those books than California alone. But the people's choice is, of course, Saga. It is a love story between two warring races, and these two who have a baby and are trying to get away from the conflict. This is probably the most popular Image book, probably the most popular independent book, period. But this and East of West, both excellent reads. So let's just take a peek here. What was I going to talk about? We got the hot comics. We got the must reads. Let's do small press for a second. One thing that a lot of you don't know about is small press. And what that means is you're going to have on any comic book store shelf, your Marvel, your DC, and your independents. Now, independents that get distributed through Diamond Comics, they're indies. They're still considered small press, but what I really mean by small press is the people out there who are putting out their own books. They're giving you stuff you won't see anywhere else, and it's right in your neighborhood. So we have a wall full of it. I know many other comic shops do. But what this is people who work a normal job. They're putting out books. They're spending their evenings writing. They're drawing. And with the way the internet is now, you can find writers and artists. You can get your stuff published. And it's just something that's really special because of the passion that these people put into it. So there are groups on Facebook, I know. There's groups on all the social networks. It's well worth checking into because it's going to be stuff that you are not going to find without really looking for it. And when you pick it up, the people who created it, the feeling that they get, it is something special. We publish our own small press comics here at Empires. And like I said, we have a wall full of stuff. So if you ever need a recommendation, even if you're not in the area, I can tell you what to look for, because you can go to their websites, you can purchase it, and you can support something that somebody has put an immense amount of time and love into. So once again, one of the main things we need to do here is talk about the community and the comic shops in general. During this time, again, it's extremely important to support your local comic book shop. I'm not saying just mine. Hit whatever is near you, spread the love, look for something new, go in, talk to them, because outside of these times, it is a place for a community to come together. I know a ton of people in here who have met through events that we do, met just through talking, and have gone on to be friends outside of the shop. It's a place, a safe place, I guess, for people who love what we do. You don't get a lot of chances to talk about East of West while you're sitting at your job, but in a place like this, you can come down, strike up a conversation. Everyone is willing to talk, and it's just a really great time. So I hope you guys will check out your comic shop if you haven't. And of course, if you already are, make sure you sign up for a saver. That's what I forgot to talk about. If you're going to start collecting, you need to talk to your shop, tell them what you're collecting, and what they'll do is they'll pull it for you monthly. You don't have to do a thing. You just wait, show up, your books are magically on hold for you. Now, this does a couple things. A, it allows you to make sure you do not miss a single issue of the books that you love. And B, it allows the comic shop to know who is buying what, so that they can make sure that they have it on order and that you have it on the shelf for them. So that's about it, guys. I've run my time. I appreciate you watching. I appreciate everything everyone has done for the comic community in general. And I hope to see you guys in the shop and at the cons, especially StocktonCon, when we can get back to it.
Ben, thank you so much. Do you have time for a couple of questions?
Yes, most definitely.
What are some of your favorite personally, and then recommending like what a lot of the folks come in to get from the past? I'm personally a Fantastic Four fan. What do you like that you could recommend for folks from the golden era, the Silver Age era of Marvel on DC?
Oh, or any of them. Well,
or any of them, really.
Yeah, I grew up a Marvel kid. You only had so much allowance. You had to choose. I still collected some DC, but I was all Marvel. And my absolute favorite go-to with the old stuff is Spider-Man. Peter Parker is the quintessential superhero, does what's right despite everything that happened to him. And so those are some of my favorite classic issues to go for.
What about DC?
DC, Legion of Superheroes. We are seeing it back on the shelf. I am one of the 6 Legion of Superhero fans in the country, and I have a ton of their books. It was the one thing as a kid that if it was on the shelf, I would take my allowance and I would get that rather than a Marvel book.
When it's obviously East of West is a big favorite of yours.
Oh, yeah.
And I had never gone through and finished The Walking Dead, and I finally did it over a few weeks, reading about 6 or 7 issues a night, and got through all 193. I still haven't read Negan Lives yet, but I'm excited to get on to that at some point just to see it. What is your favorite Image or independent title from way back?
So Walking Dead would actually be one of the ones that I would push people towards, because I realized when it ended that it started the year I opened the shop. And I have been reading it monthly for 17 years, and all of a sudden it's gone. There's like this little hole in here for that horrific book. So that one is definitely one of them. But Kirkman, man, you can't go wrong with Invincible. I don't know if you read any of that.
Yes.
But he starts out strong. It's got its ups and downs, just like any book that goes as long as that did. But the last few years were better than the beginning. Mm-hmm. It is just such a solid book. Another good one, it's not necessarily way back, but Birthright, if anybody hasn't read it, it's essentially John Carter of Mars, but a kid who grows up on another world and then comes back to Earth to save it. Really beautiful artwork, great story.
Yeah, there's been some really amazing things over the past 10, 15 years that have come out that have really just kind of found their place in the world. I mean, and you mentioned, you know, The Walking Dead being there since you opened. I mean, that kind of had to be a little bit of a gut punch, and it was, you know, kudos to Kirkman for just kind of putting the little fake out in on the last issue.
It was very strange because the only thing I wish he wouldn't have done is told us the day before it came out that it was the final issue.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have just read it and been like, wait, there's no more. But it was a very, Kirkman always has to try and be unique and do his special thing. And it was a huge fake out telling us there were more issues and then just canceling it. But I think it had run its course. I think he had told his story, and I don't want to give anything away about the end for people who have not read it, but it felt satisfying.
It was. I enjoyed it, and of course, you know, it's been a while since the final issue came out, and I was way behind. I had started it once and got about 120 in, and then you know, things happened. I just kind of dropped off. But reading it again and reading it all the way through to the end was very satisfying, as you mentioned. And sometimes you don't get that in movies and TV shows from time to time.
Yeah, and we're going to get to experience that again because he's releasing the entire thing in color now. Mm-hmm. That's coming out twice a month, and I'm going to, because I have to, I'm going to get them all again, but I'm going to read them all again. It's going to be like an entirely new experience in color. Now, that being said, I think black and white was a perfect format for it. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I can't help myself. I will be getting every single issue.
So I know we're focusing on the comics here today.
Yeah.
But talk about the hot sauce.
Yeah, so I have always loved hot sauce. It has been something that I like all kinds, whether it's a nice, you know, ghost pepper one or it's a sweet jalapeno. I have them with me all the time. I've got a fridge full here. I had a fridge full at home because you want the right sauce for the right occasion mm-hmm. and the right food. And there's nowhere in town that carried the selection I wanted. I used to go visit my grandparents, and they had a place in Lodi called Habanero Hots that had a wall full of hot sauce. And I used to go and visit them. I'd grab a ton and I'd stock up till the next time. Well, when they passed, there was nothing here in Sacramento. So I figured, why not try it ourselves? I figured if it works, great. If it doesn't, I've got a bunch of hot sauce to go through. And now we have not only found that a ton of our customers are into hot sauce as well, but we've introduced a lot of our customers to hot sauce. And we now have people who don't read comics at all who just come to the shop for hot sauce.
That's great.
So it's been great. Right before COVID, I put up a whole shelf for it. And now that we're back open, we're slowly filling it. So even if you think you've seen what we have, there's going to be plenty more.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Ben, for being a part of this. And obviously, we can't wait to see you in person at our next event. And hopefully that's in November at Lodi. If not, maybe January for StocktonCon. And
fingers crossed.
Whenever it is. So
yes,
thank you so much, Ben, and we will talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much for doing this. These kind of things are a lot of fun, you know, now that we can't really do anything. So having a couple days of this where we can just turn on the television and stream it, it's great.
Awesome. All right. Ben Schwartz from Empire's Comic